everyone, how's it going? Hope you're all doing great. In this episode right here, we're going to be covering Rails API, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to update our API slightly. So if you take a look at the app that we have right now, we're going to see that we come to this contacts page right after we sign up. And in the previous episodes of the React Foundation series, episode 50, we got our app to the point where we can now enter an email and a password and click sign up, and then it takes us to the contacts page. Now, when we created this app, we wanted it to kind of like be a multi-tenant as well. And if you remember a few episodes back in the Rails API series, we configured our app to be a multi-tenant, which means one user can have many accounts. However, once the user signs up, we don't really have any account information. Like, we don't know what the account name is going to be. We don't know like what, the address the account is, because, when we're going to create invoices, we need all that information, like which currency the default currency should be, things like that. So we're going to need to, develop our API a little bit further. And you'll also see that, when we go to the contacts page, we get this undefined method contact. So we're going to work on fixing all that because, we actually have a user now in terms of the current user, because the user sign up, the user makes a request as themselves. We should be able to have the contacts, right? But now the contacts actually, if we look at the model here, belong to the organization. So over here. And the organization belongs to account. So basically what's going on here is now we can have multiple accounts and multiple, organizations in the account. And so basically we need to kind of like update our API slightly to be able to support all that. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be updating our contacts endpoint. We're no longer going to directly be accessing the contacts through current user. We need to be accessing the contacts through an account, because let's say, for example, I have an account, I have an account and I might have multiple accounts. I can manage multiple companies, for example. Let's say right now my company Artellectual is going to issue an invoice. I should be able to enter all my details, go to the accounts page, and then basically enter some kind of account detail. And if I want to create multiple accounts, I should be able to do that. So basically what we need to do is create the endpoint and scope contacts correctly. So we'll cover all this in the next upcoming episodes. Let's start off by creating the endpoint that will allow a user to create their account. So this is very straightforward. I'm going to go into the V1. I'm going to create a new file called accounts controller.rb. And here we're going to do a module v1 end. And here we're going to do a class accounts controller inherits from application controller. All right, so because the user is going to be the owner of the account, the user who has created the account, registered with us. So we're going to do def create. And we're going to have access to the current user object. So what we want to do is allow the user to enter the parameters. So right now, let's look at the schema and see what we have in terms of the account. So I'm going to go into DB schema. So account has name and owner ID. So it's very simplistic right now. We need to kind of add a little bit to this. So initially, we're just going to have the name, and the slug is going to be auto-generated. I think we already have that configured over here with a friendly ID. So here, we're just going to do a account equals current user dot accounts dot build account params. And we need a private method here. So private. All right, so basically here we're going to do a params dot require account permit name. So let's think about, this controller is pretty much almost done. So what we need to do here is the if account.save. We're going to return render create status created. Use a symbol here. Else. And then we're just going to return a head unprocessable entity here. Just like that. So that's going to return a 422 without any content. So basically, okay, so we mentioned in the previous episode we're going to follow. So what I want to do here is I want to add a and manages the account model. Simple enough, straightforward. All right. So we need to leave an empty line as well. So that should fix all the linter problems. There we go. So basically what this action is, we just allow us to create an account for the user. We also need to update the front end at some point, but right now we're going to focus on the account. So let's think about what the account actually needs to have. Right now we have the account name, right? So over here, and based on our schema, we can add account name in there as well. And so what we need to add here is the owner ID is just going to be the, automatically filled out. So what we need to add here is we need to add some kind of configuration, like for example, in an invoicing CRM application, when I'm issuing the invoice, I need to be able to know, for example, the address, right? The address will come in handy. And we need to have the, ability to put in like, the tax ID and all that stuff. So what we need to do then is like, okay, configure the VAT, like what's the VAT percentage of that account, and maybe even put in like which country the account is in, right? So things like that we're gonna need to add in. So and the currency, of course. So what we're gonna be doing here is we're gonna add a few fields to our account model. So I'm gonna head over into the terminal and here. So I'm gonna go to the API. So cd invoiced. So Rails G migration add details to accounts. And I'm going to go in and write the file myself. I just want to generate the migration file automatically here. So I'm going to head over into the code here. We should have the migration file now. Here it is. And we're going to add column accounts. Over here, so we're going to have like, let's say, the address, text. So we want it to be multiple lines. So we're going to use text for that. So add column, tax, let's say VAT rate. Actually, that needs to be accounts. So the VAT rate is going to be, I guess in most countries, I guess it's, I don't know, maybe some countries have 8.5, some countries have 7. So I would guess that we need a float value, right? So we can add a like a float value to take care of the like the VAT rates if it's 7.0 or whatever it needs to be. So this kind of needs to support like multiple, types, because we need to be able to accommodate like countries that have 8.5 or 10.12 or I don't know, whatever other VAT rates there are out there. So float is good. So add column accounts. So we also need so company ID, right? So in Thailand here, at least, we have this company ID, which is like a universal one. Like if someone use that to look it up, you could use that to look up like, the company detail that was registered officially with the government, which is pretty cool. And so I guess we need some kind of like company. So actually it's called the taxpayer ID. And that will be an integer, but I think in some countries it's going to have numbers and alphabets. So I guess string is good for this case. All right, so we need, what else do we need? Default currency, yeah, so that's going to be a string. So add column accounts default currency string. So that should be enough for now. And basically, these are the kind of information we want the user to be able to put in from the front end to, you know, set up their account. So that's going to be enough for now. So Rails DB migrate should work. And we will have all the fields that we need. All right, so now we can go over here. And so what we want to do here is we want to add all those fields. So address. And then we also want to add the VAT rate and the taxpayer and default currency. Yep. So that should be enough. So here it's complaining probably about line being too long. So what we can do is we can clean that up like that. Or there's a better way, which is we just do something like this. All right. So that should be enough for us to be able to create an account. So while we're here, we can also go ahead and create the update. So def update. So this will allow us to kind of like modify the account. So account equals current user dot accounts dot friendly dot find params account ID. All right, so I'm going to be using friendly find because I'm going to pass in the slug. We're using friendly ID library over here. And so basically what that's going to do is once we type in a name, it's going to generate a slug, which is, you know, it's friendly in the, so we don't have to expose our primary key. And then basically we're going to pass that with every request in the URL, and then we can use that to look up which account we're working with here. Actually, in this case, it's going to be the ID. And then basically we're going to do if account.update account params render update else head unprocessable entity. All right, so you will start to see an emerging pattern over here. And that's one thing I want to show you guys as well. You see, like, if something happens, render, and then if not, do it unauthorized. So I'm just showing you guys the pattern that's emerging here. If contact save, here we should handle the error as well in case. But, you'll start to see that this pattern happens a lot. And I'm going to show you guys as we progress how to abstract all this and clean this up and make it look really, really pretty. All right, so that should be it for the creation and update. So let's update our routes. So I'm going to go into routes. And basically here we're going to add a resources, accounts, only, create, and update. In terms of destroy, I'm not sure about how to handle destruction of the account just yet, because the account is going to hold a lot of information, and it could cause like referential problems, like if we have a contact and we delete the account. So we need to think about how we're going to handle that. So right now, creation and update should be enough. Now, one more thing I want to point out to you guys is that the contacts is no longer going to be accessible from the root. Like from V1, we can't just access the contacts anymore. Now, what's going to happen is we want to nest the contacts inside of the accounts. So what I'm going to do here is do end, and I'm going to put the contacts inside. So basically now we're creating some kind of context. So let's take a look at the routes and what we have over here. So I'm going to go over into here and do Rails routes. And I'm going to explain to you guys, once we have the routes output, why we need to nest, the contacts the way that we're doing here. So let me just remove some white space so it doesn't complain. All right, so let's take a look at this V1 accounts contact. So right now, when we make an API request to get the contacts, we need to be scoped inside of the account first. So what that means is when we create the user is created, we need to redirect the user to the account creation page, right? So then once we're in the account creation page, they create the account. Then everything else after, we're working within the account. So we're going to be scoped under the account through the account ID. So basically what that means is we can no longer just get access to the contacts without a scope, without an account scope. And so that's exactly what makes sense, because we don't want to expose one account's information to another account holder. Like, so what if in my organization I have multiple accounts, and then I want to be able to dissect, like, okay, this account, these are the people who are responsible for this account. So we need to scope things correctly, and starting with the route scoping is how we're going to do it. So basically we need to update the contacts endpoint as well, and we need to nest that correctly. So what we're going to do is we're going to finish off this episode here because it's starting to get a little bit long. But I think you guys start to understand the point of like why all these updates are starting to happen. Also, I want to move towards doing test driven as well. So we're going to start to write some tests really soon, because going to PAW and then testing it's nice when we're learning things, but when we're doing development, it's much, much faster to just start to write tests. So with that, I want to wrap it up. And this is a free episode. And so like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also become a member to get access to all of our content. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.